Hi, welcome back. My name's Chris, I'm a French teacher at We Communicate. In this video I'd like to tell you about a big divide between Europe and the United States regarding nature, and more widely the environment, that I believe has far-reaching consequences. I think the reason, understandably, why so many Americans want to go to France usually falls within one of three reasons, and connectedness being one of them. The same connection that might be harder to find in the United States. As one who's lived in Europe, the United Kingdom, and now America, I have a feeling that all of this might stem from a very different relationship towards nature that I see in America, and that might create a sense of disconnection. And I'll start my explanation with an anecdote. My first ever encounter with poison ivy in the United States unveiled some differences between Europe and America in their relationship towards nature, although I didn't recognize them at the time. And you might call it a green love affair versus a green none affair. When I got poison ivy, my legs were in a dreadful state, in a frightful state. They were peppered with red insect bites, itchy spots, liquid bubbles. Even my hands were showing similar gangrene-like symptoms. It was horrible to witness and really scary. And I told my American family, "Why didn't you bloody tell me?" They answered, "We thought you knew. Never walk barefoot again." As if I had put aside all common sense and been caught guilty of having a careless smoke, dousing my car in petrol sort of thing. Coming from Europe, I had been conditioned to see nature as the benevolent green substance that appeases and pleases. As Europeans, we enjoy the friendly flowers, the birds and the little animals, and we always have a pair of binoculars ready for when a feathered friend lands on our bird feeder. And yes, we do walk barefoot, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to feel the vibrations of the earth, and we'd have a piece of plastic between our feet and the earth. In our soul, as Europeans, we know that nature is a well-meaning element whose role is to make humans feel better. We live together in harmony, and we can name the various species that we see, and in the summer we pick blackberries from the fields, and we toot a merry tune on our little reed flute as the sun smiles down on us. We think that frogs, bats, owls and hedgehogs should be helped, and we put food and water out in our garden for the little birds. It's a whole behaviour that connects us to nature. In America, I remember the first time the chap rang the doorbell to propose his bug spraying services. I didn't quite understand. He wanted to spray for ants and bees, and I said, "What? Why?" I then smiled to him and I said, "No thanks, we're European, we like insects." And we laughed and he went on his merry way, and it was all good. But indeed, why? Why would you spray for ants and bees? Why? Do Americans absolutely want to live in properties where the garden has no life at all in it? When I look around, it certainly seems to be the plan. Perfectly trimmed lawns, crossways, never use the garden, never walk in it, just a manicured lawn with noisy John Deere engines. That, to me, is disconnection. Not to hammer my point in too much, but in Europe we've never heard of bug spraying companies, and we understand instinctively the obvious reasons not to use Roundup. We know without being taught that a garden is a living thing that doesn't require petrol leaf blowers to shoo away the leaves that were designed to disintegrate naturally. Now certainly Europe isn't perfect. There are aspects of nature that are less kind, such as the thistles and the nettles that sting the little children's legs. Ouch! Watch out also for the wasps in August, but that's as bad as it gets. The longer I live here in America, the more I realize that the American relationship towards nature not only manifests as a visible opposition, but also translates a deeper human detachment and disconnection. There are humans and there is nature, and the two don't mix. Now, understandably, the weather gets a lot more extreme than in Europe, but I don't think it's the only answer to explain this opposition. When the seasons change in America, I've noticed that it's always met with a sense of dread. The snow blocks the roads, the sun burns the skin, and the winds cause power cuts. And they say, oh no, next week it's going to be in the 90s. But it doesn't only mean that the sun's too hot, it means that we would prefer if nature didn't do its thing and impede on the lives of humans. I think that whereas a European rather defines themselves as cohabiting with nature, an American might see nature as the unwanted that forces itself onto the only genuine natural element. And in the order of importance, humans in America come first, and it's nature that must be dominated and made to accommodate us. The very first time my wife and I went for a walk at dusk in America, she said, "We need to leave now, the bugs are going to come out." I didn't take her seriously. I couldn't process the message, and in the end she drove off without me. She was furious, and it created a sizable argument, but I couldn't believe it. I had never heard of going inside because of insects. It's just, as a European, it's something I couldn't process. I have another example. That time my wife and I were in the front garden, quietly pulling out dandelions from the front garden under a rose-tinted evening sky in the summer. The neighbour found it reasonable to start his leaf blower. The thought of humans enjoying a connection with the earth didn't cross his mind any more than if I had said, "Do you mind? I was enjoying that conversation with the ant there." 2 days ago, the fellow over there, my neighbour, was drying his car with a petrol leaf blower at 8 p.m. This is a true story, and he was wearing these things. The irony. So it was so loud, he was wearing these things to blow dry his car at 8 p.m. with a petrol leaf blower. You wouldn't believe the noise. It's a funny thing. I couldn't process it. Yesterday, I wrote an angry email. It wasn't actually angry. No, it wasn't actually. It was quite factual. But yesterday, I wrote an email to a gardening company that sends to the property next door industrial lawnmowers. It makes so much noise that I have to stop working for a full hour because I can't get anything done. It's that loud. It's like having an airplane next door. That's the noise it makes. It's insane. Again, to me, that's disconnection. Not thinking for a second of the impact of noise on other people. Think about water sprinklers for a second. I think the use of water sprinklers year-round translates to much more than a desire for a green lawn. It's not only about the lawn. I think it's the belief that nature fails to meet the human standard, and it's the only one that matters. It's the human standard. The very trust in the infinite wisdom of nature is broken, and with this, a human detachment from the environment. The very first year I was here in America, I couldn't believe it. I thought of the tons of wasted drinkable water that were lost all over America. On Sundays, I saw businesses that had their water sprinklers on automatically while it was raining. I saw water sprinklers on as late as November. I actually videoed it and sent it to people. In November, they had the water sprinklers on. Let's talk about light pollution. Many households use these dazzling safety lights that come on, ironically, as soon as a leaf blows by. Our neighbour, the fellow over there, regularly lights up his whole house by means of a floodlight that's directed towards his house, that's so bright we only get a portion of it. One angle where the light is facing his house, we're over here, we only get a small fraction of it, and our room is lit up at night. That's how powerful the thing is. I have no doubt that inside his house it must be so bright that it shines in the cracks of their bum. It must be just dazzling inside. They probably walk around with sunglasses, it's so ridiculous. Now, this video isn't to manifest for pagan rituals under the new moon, and it's not about nitpicking and speaking about all the ills of America, not at all. My actual question is much more pragmatic. If indeed the average American doesn't consider themselves a product of nature, yet undeniably is an element of it, what then do they define themselves as? More worrying still, If this essential ingredient, I mean nature, this essential ingredient of their very being, of our very being, is being denied, well, does this perception of nature as other then lead to a profound detachment from the self, as I believe it does? And this is my core idea. Being connected leads to an understanding of the self. An understanding of the self means meta-cognition, the ability to take a step back on our own actions and see ourselves from the outside. Fast food obesity, for example, is an absence, in my mind, fast food obesity is an absence of metacognition, the absence of the question, what am I doing, what am I eating, and why am I doing it? You know, we say that many Americans struggle to learn languages, but is it an accident? Language learning also implies the knowledge of the self, reflecting on our own practice as students, which becomes probably a lot more challenging if we aren't trained in metacognition due to this disconnection. You follow the reasoning? In my experience as a teacher, I would say that the many Americans who relocate to France usually cite three main reasons for doing so. One, the pace of life. Two, a sense of the authentic. Three, a connection. Interestingly, it just happens to be the country where nature is deeply valued. And to finish this video, I'd like to add this last idea. I think it's possible that some Americans who overlook the importance of learning French when they go to France are at risk of searching for connection in France without the tools to do so. I think there's a risk of exporting from America this loss of connection because the scenery alone can't do it. My name's Chris. I teach French. I do bilingual French classes for adults. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it was useful. See you soon.